Okay, welcome back everyone to the second day of our Kriya Yoga online solstice celebration retreat. This morning we have Chris Sartain from Chile speaking with us. He's going to be talking about the synergy of the student and teacher relationship. Again, Chris has been a long-time student of Mr. Davis, or Eugene Davis, also my teacher. He's been ordained by Mr. Davis. Chris has written numerous books, and this is one of them, probably one of my favorites, Kriya Yoga Realizations. Chris and his wife, Carolyn, have a retreat center in Chile, which one of these days we'll go down there and do a larger session in person with Chris. So that'll be wonderful. We were talking about that the other day. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Chris. Chris, thank you for being here, and I look forward to what you have to say today.
So Ryan asked me to talk about the teacher-student relationship. And I've thought a lot about it in preparation for this talk. And actually, this talk has changed quite a bit and has evolved, especially over the last few days as I've contemplated it more. And so typically when I prepare a talk, it's fairly well ordered. I was a school teacher for about 10 years. And so I like to have my presentations very well organized and very well prepared. However, this one might not go as smoothly as one of my typical presentations would go. So if I jump around a bit, that's okay. Don't worry. We'll tie it all together at the end, I'm sure, and we'll leave a little bit of time for Q&A at the end if anyone has a question. So let's start with a little bit of history. As many of you, I'm sure, know, the Upanishads are some of the first really yogic texts that contain real yoga philosophy. And they're essentially philosophical commentaries over the Vedas, the earlier Vedas, some of the earliest writings in human history from ancient India. And so I feel like it's appropriate that we turn to the Upanishads, that are some of the original yoga texts, to see what they have to say as it concerns the guru. One of my favorite Upanishads, because it contains the cosmology of the 5 koshas, pancha kosha, the 5 layers of our being, that I really love. It's called the Taittiriya Upanishad. This is a pretty good translation and commentary. You can see the author's name there, but anyway, I like this commentary. This particular Upanishad. This Upanishad is from about 900 BC. All the Upanishads were written essentially between 1000 BC and 100 BC, approximately. This is one of the first original, Ryan, at the end of the presentation, I'll type up the name and the author for y'all and put it in the chat so y'all can have that. This particular Upanishad is from about 900 BC, so it's one of the first Upanishads, one of the earliest ones. And so that's one reason why it's one of my favorites, because we can look to this text and see some of the original yoga philosophy in it. And it talks in this Upanishad a lot about the Gurukula. Yeah, and the Gurukula was essentially a school, like a yoga school, essentially, where the guru would live with a few disciples, typically in the forest or away from the cities and towns, the population centers, and quiet rural areas. And they would study, they would practice yoga, they would recite the Vedas and whatnot, do their fire ceremonies and things of that nature, but they were also practicing meditation, pranayama, things like this. So these are the early yogis. Of course, yoga goes back even further. We can look back to the Indus-Sarasvati Valley civilization, from around 3000 BC. We find these seals, these little clay seals, that have people essentially doing yoga postures or practicing yoga or meditation postures. And we know that yoga goes back at least that far, to 3000 BC, probably much further. But at least here in this text, from around 1000 BC or so, about 3000 years ago, we have some information about the guru. And the Gurukula, which was, again, this school where the guru and his disciples lived together and practiced and learned together. And there were two paths that a student or chela could take in this Gurukula. They could stay there and continue to live and study with the guru in their small community, or they could return to society and become a householder. So we can see these two paths that existed for eons for yogis, the sort of celibate renunciate path and the householder path. And there's a cool verse in here I want to share with y'all. And it's the guru speaking to a householder as they leave for the world, as they're graduating, so to say, from the Gurukula, and they make their way out into the the real world to be a householder. The guru gives them this advice. It says, having imparted the wisdom, the teacher instructs the disciple, speak out the truth, practice righteousness, do not neglect your self-study, svadhyaya, right? Having brought to the teacher the wealth that is pleasing, do not cut off the line of progeny. Let there be no neglect of truth. Let there be no neglect of righteousness. Let there be no neglect of protecting yourself. Let there be no neglect of prosperity. Let there be no neglect of self-study and teaching. Let there be no neglect of the duties to the gods and ancestors. Be one to whom the mother is a god. Be one to whom the father is a god. Be one to whom the teacher is a god. Be one to whom the guest is a god. So there we have some of the first written instructions that a guru gave to a householder about how to live out in the world. And so we have this ancient tradition from India of the Gurukula and the guru and his disciples or her disciples. Okay? So this is an ancient tradition from India that probably has about 5,000 years of history and culture and tradition. Whereas in the West, the guru has about 100 years of history. So we need to understand that, especially those of us who are Westerners. We have to understand that here in the West, this concept of the guru is only about 100 years old versus 5,000 years or so in India. And that's why maybe the whole guru thing hasn't been so quick to catch on here, because it only has 100 years of history. And we're slowly educating ourselves here in the West about this tradition of guru yoga, of learning from a guru, an enlightened or semi-enlightened teacher. Okay. And also in the Taittiriya Upanishad, it talks a lot about pravakana. Pravakana. Not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. Sort of a rare Sanskrit word. But it means listening to the guru's teachings. And it repeatedly, there are verses where it like repeats this over and over and over, the importance of listening to the guru's teachings. And in this Upanishad, it says that the two primary practices in the Gurukula are self-study and listening to the guru's teachings, svadhyaya and pravakana. So for the ancient yogis, at least at this particular period, for the people that were practicing yoga, that wrote this particular Upanishad, these were the two primary practices to be found in the Gurukula, or ashram, basically, right? Self-study, svadhyaya, and listening to the guru's teachings. Well, we would now probably call satsanga or satsang. And so that's interesting. And so we know that this tradition of yoga and yogis practicing with their guru in remote locations is very ancient. In the Vedas, they even mention the Muni and the Kesvan, and these groups of yogis. They didn't use the word yogi, but they were called Muni or Kesvan, and these were groups of monks, celibates, basically, who lived in remote areas and practiced pranayama, meditation, rituals, ceremonies, and so we know that this practice is ancient, and that this tradition of the guru is ancient, from India. However, here in the West, our values are slightly different. The culture is different. And in the West, we tend to value more independence. And and because of the Judeo-Christian tradition, that is the predominant tradition in the Western world, the guru simply isn't part of that. And actually, it would be considered sort of sacrilegious to have any teachers other than Jesus Christ. Although it's interesting to note that Jesus Christ had a teacher, John the Baptist, right? And that John the Baptist and Jesus were most likely belonged to a group called the Essenes, who lived in the deserts in ancient Israel. And these Essenes, there's some evidence to show that they were probably vegetarians. They practiced ritual bathing. They were celibate. They lived in tiny communities out in the middle of nowhere, and they prayed, a lot. And they were practically, yogis, or what we would consider to be yogis. And that John the Baptist comes out of that tradition, and that actually the teacher was paramount in those groups. And so John the Baptist and Jesus actually come from this tradition where the teachers and prophets were paramount. And so Jesus actually comes out of that kind of tradition, which is interesting. But of course, that has been overlooked by most of the Judeo-Christian world. And it would be sort of odd if you had any kind of spiritual teacher outside of Jesus Christ, if you are a Christian, or if you come from that tradition. And so that's another reason why here in the West, the idea or concept of having a guru is still new, novel. Okay, and it's taken a little while for it to become more and more accepted and acceptable for people to have a guru, or to even to be able to say out loud, I have a guru, or I have a spiritual teacher, or I follow this guru. It's taken some time here in the West to become acceptable, simply because of cultural differences, religious differences, and things of that nature, because it's so new here. It doesn't have 5,000 years of history like it does really in India necessarily. Okay. Also here in the West, there tends to be a little bit more distrust of authority than in some Eastern countries and Eastern cultures, and that's okay, you know. But that might be another reason that the Western world never had this type of tradition. They might have had small groups of mystics, you know, practicing with a wise teacher and all of that, but this guru tradition never really caught on in the West. Yeah, it's just now starting to. Okay. Also in the West, of course, we've had the issue of there being some gurus who didn't behave so great, and they made the news. And so, because they're the only gurus that ever make the news, the ones that you know, aren't so perfect, and so they make the news, and then people assume that all gurus are like this guy they saw on the news or whatever. So that's another reason, I think, in the West. We've had a little bit of a prickly relationship with the guru here and there. That's changing, especially for those of us who've had the great fortune and blessing and grace to work with some great gurus. Now, in our tradition of Kriya Yoga, of course, well, we have to understand, in the yoga tradition, there are various sects and branches of yoga, and it's quite complicated, the history of yoga. And in certain traditions, the guru is more heavily emphasized than other traditions. In some traditions, the guru is everything, you know, and in other traditions, the guru isn't as important, doesn't have as vital a role to play. In our Kriya Yoga tradition, the guru is very important and is emphasized heavily. So it's important to understand that if we're talking about Kriya Yoga, and especially our lineage, the guru is extremely important, especially, I think, or due in no small part to the writings of Paramahansa Yogananda. He was a very devoted soul, and in his personal path, the guru was very, very important. And he was an extremely devoted yogi. He was extremely devoted to his guru. And that's okay, that's good. So, but I'm explaining that in our Kriya Yoga tradition, in our Kriya Yoga lineage, the guru is very important, and it is heavily emphasized. And again, due in no small part to the writings of Paramahansa Yogananda, especially the autobiography of the yogi, where he talks in such glowing terms over the gurus and his lineage. And so in our Kriya Yoga tradition, the guru is extremely important. It's a vital part of the tradition and of the lineage. Okay? Now, the question arises, can one practice Kriya Yoga without having a guru, without having a Kriya Yoga guru? Of course. Kriya Pranayama is just Kavali Pranayama. In the ancient yogic texts, they didn't use the terminology that Yogananda used. This technique that we learned during the initiation is called Kavali Pranayama in the old yoga texts. And it was a well-known technique to the ancient yogis. So can you practice Kriya Pranayama and the other Kriya techniques without claiming a particular guru as your guru? Yes, of course. There's nothing stopping you from practicing any technique that is beneficial to you. However, in our Kriya Yoga tradition, these techniques are transmitted from generation to generation, and not just the techniques. This is key. It's not just the techniques that the guru is passing on. There's also a transmission of energy that occurs. There's a transmission of awakened consciousness, of awakened soul force, Shaktipat also. There's a transmission of teachings, of intellectual knowledge. And then, of course, there's the transmission of the techniques and mantras and all of that. But it's not just the transmission of techniques. And I'll talk a little bit more about the physical presence of the guru later, at the end of the talk. So let's talk about a few myths concerning the guru. Many people think that a guru is or must be a fully enlightened, liberated avatar. Yeah, that's typically not the case. If you're fortunate enough to stumble upon an avatar, more power to you. But they're few and far between. Hopefully you've noticed. So if you can't find a fully liberated Buddha to study with, well, then you might want to lower your expectations a bit for a guru. Yeah. Another myth about the guru is that they are or they should be a perfect human being, flawless. No little habits or personality quirks, nothing. They have to be a perfect human. They don't suffer. The guru never suffers. They're perfect and they're incapable of suffering. So this is another myth. The guru is like a therapist or counselor you go to talk about your problems. This is another myth. Please don't do that with your guru if you have a guru. Also, another myth is that the guru is egoless, completely egoless, has no ego. This, of course, is not possible. And so this is another myth surrounding the guru. Okay. Now, what is a guru then? If it's not those things. Well, in the yoga tradition, the guru is essentially a wise spiritual teacher, mentor, and guide. Yeah. The word guru literally means the remover of darkness. Yeah. And a guru in the yoga tradition is typically part of a lineage. Okay? And this might be one difference between a guru and just someone that is a spiritual teacher. Okay? When we talk about a guru, we're talking about the yoga tradition. There are many spiritual teachers and spiritual guides that exist outside of the yoga tradition. But when we speak of the guru, we're talking specifically about the spiritual teacher within the yoga tradition. Okay? And really, what differentiates a guru from the yoga tradition from a spiritual teacher from any other tradition? Well, a few things. It's murky. There are no clear-cut rules for all this, but what I've come to find is that a guru in the yoga tradition, there are certain expectations in that relationship. One is loyalty. There's sort of an unspoken expectation of loyalty to your guru, if you have a guru. In other words, typically you wouldn't have 3 or 4. You have one guru. You have a guru. Yeah, loyalty. Devotion is another part of this guru-disciple relationship in the yoga tradition. Typically, you would be devoted to your guru. And seva, or selfless service, is also another typical part of this guru-disciple relationship in the yoga tradition. So we have loyalty, devotion, selfless service. These are sort of unspoken expectations within the yoga tradition for the guru-disciple relationship. Okay? In other spiritual traditions, it's not necessarily like that. And there are other spiritual teachers that would not expect loyalty or devotion or selfless service from you, because they're not within this yoga culture and tradition. Okay? So a lot of people, I get emails all the time, probably about once a week, people complaining they can't find a guru anywhere. There's no gurus living in their neighborhood. Well, and they say they really want a guru. They really, really want a guru. But then I ask them, are you ready to be loyal, devoted? Are you ready to render selfless service if necessary? Are you ready to surrender a little bit of your ego? Are you ready to submit to authority a little bit? You have to be ready to do all that if you really truly want a guru. Otherwise, you might just want a spiritual teacher, or you might just prefer to watch the videos on YouTube of your favorite, spiritual teacher, which is also good. That's fine. You should do that, but that's not necessarily a typical guru-disciple relationship in the yoga tradition. You understand? Something else. Within the yoga tradition, there are said to be 3 types of guru. Okay? The first type, which is the majority of gurus, are the reminder. This kind of guru can give you information and techniques that will help you remember what you are. And they will help you along your path. Okay? So this type of guru can transmit teachings, can transmit techniques and information, and can be a good guide for you. Okay? So that's the first kind of guru, and it's the vast majority of the gurus that exist currently. Okay? The second kind in this current yuga, okay? Dwapara Yuga. The second kind is the Awakener. This kind of guru is quite rare. And the Awakener actually has the capacity or ability to awaken your Shakti or Kundalini, your dormant soul force, this evolutionary and transformative force of supreme consciousness that is responsible for our evolution, that is responsible for the changes in our physiology and also in our astral body, that facilitate elevated states of consciousness and being. So this type of guru actually has the ability to to awaken your soul forces. Okay? And these gurus are rare. Not a whole lot of them around. Okay? And then even rarer still is the third type of guru, which is the liberator. And just from being in the presence of this type of guru, you can be liberated. Now, I'm sure these gurus exist. I'm sure there are some, but they're extremely rare. Okay, so if you are to encounter a guru, you will most likely encounter either the reminder or the awakener, if you're fortunate enough. Okay? So if you're waiting around for a liberator, for a fully liberated avatar to just, do a lot of your work for you, you might be waiting several incarnations. Yeah. But they're out there. I'm sure they are. I believe Mahavatar Babaji was probably that kind of guru. I'm sure there have been others. Probably there still are. Okay. So those are the three kinds of gurus. Now, when people ask me, how do I find a guru? Look, this universe operates on laws of cause and effect. We know this. And the guru-disciple relationship follows these laws of cause and effect. It's no different. And so the old saying, when the student is ready, the guru appears, does seem to be pretty true from my observations and whatnot. And well, two things. Preparedness, yes, but also receptivity. Are you really receptive? Are you really ready for that kind of serious spiritual connection and relationship with someone? It can be intense. So preparedness and receptivity are both very important. But as Mr. Davis, our guru, used to say, don't go guru shopping. Yeah, don't do that. When you're ready and you're receptive, the guru will appear in your life. This is true. And this is just a universal law, spiritual law, that has not changed for at least 5,000 years and will not change. This guru-disciple relationship has worked for at least 5,000 years and will continue to work well into the future. It's very hip and trendy right now to say that we're in the age of Aquarius, and that in the age of Aquarius, there's no longer any need for a guru, and that the age of the guru is over. The age of the guru has ended. And this is just nonsense. Of course, these universal laws don't change. That's why they're universal laws. And they don't change based upon positions of planets and stars. They don't change based upon culture. And or context or circumstance or situation. They're universal laws, and this transmission from generation to generation of awakened consciousness and energy has worked for thousands of years and will continue to work for thousands of years more. It will always work. Okay? So Mr. Davis would always recommend, well, why don't you purify and elevate your own consciousness? And in so doing, you will be preparing yourself for the arrival of the guru in your life. Okay? So rather than wasting your time going guru hunting and guru shopping, prepare yourself. Get ready. And be receptive. Be open to possibilities. Be open to opportunities that the universe will provide for you. Okay? Now, to the issue of can you have multiple gurus? In the yoga tradition, not really. Typically, you would have one guru. Now, you may have multiple teachers. I certainly do. I certainly did, even when I was, studying closely with Mr. Davis and spending a lot of time in the ashram there. And I was very devoted to him, still am, always will be. But yeah, I learned different things from different teachers, and it's okay. But you only have one guru, you see. At least in the yoga tradition. Typically, we wouldn't have 5 or 6. You have a guru, okay? Mr. David Yogananda also talked a lot about staying in tune with the guru, the importance of staying in tune with the guru. And this is certainly true. And how do we do that? Well, Mr. Davis used to tell us, read my stuff, watch my videos, listen to my talks, keep in touch with me, and come visit me when you can. And it worked. It sounds pretty simple. Read my stuff, watch my videos, listen to my talks, keep in touch with me and let me know how you're doing, what's going on, your activities, and come visit me once in a while. I did that, and it worked. And many of his other students also did the same, and they were also able to stay attuned to his consciousness, and he was sort of a point of contact with this larger reality for many of us. Okay, so that's how you stay in tune with your spiritual teacher, your guru. If you want to tune into their consciousness, experience what they're experiencing, well, read their stuff. Watch their videos, listen to their talks. If you have the opportunity to have physical contact with a guru, then visit with them. Take advantage. Spend time in their presence. Yeah. So I want to talk now about some of the qualities of a guru, or the qualities that a guru probably should have. Okay. One important quality, and some of these I pulled, there's some old Tibetan texts, that talk about the qualities of a guru, or the qualities a guru should have. And to be honest, a lot of this is just my opinion. Yeah. So take that for whatever it's worth. But these are the qualities that I think a guru should probably have. And I think most of us would agree with most of these. A guru ought to be selfless. Seems pretty obvious, but they shouldn't have selfish motivations and intentions. They should not be interested in name or fame. This is actually one of the first qualities listed in these Tibetan texts. The guru should not be interested in name or fame. Yeah, and they should be humble, not arrogant, full of themselves. Also, they shouldn't be after money. They shouldn't be trying to get rich. Now, if they are, if they happen to get rich in the process, I guess that's okay. But that probably shouldn't be their motivation or their initial reason for wanting to get into this. Another important quality is accessibility. The guru should be accessible. You don't want to work with someone that you can't talk to. It won't answer your questions. One of the really wonderful things about working with Mr. Davis over the years was that you could just send him an email and he would answer you, usually within a few days. You might not always like his answer, but hey, he would he would answer you in a few days, and it was always like exactly what you needed to read or hear. So accessibility is very important. If your guru has millions of followers, you're not going to have much access to that person. Okay. The guru should lead an ethical life, not be abusive or manipulative, obviously. Now, if the guru has a couple little, quirks or habits or whatever, that's okay. Nobody's perfect. Okay. The guru should be a good role model, a good example for you to follow. They should practice what they preach, not be a hypocrite, obviously. Ideally, a guru should be a good writer. They should be able to write and organize their teachings in a way that the average person can understand. They should be a good speaker also. They should be able to articulate these teachings, okay, in a comprehensible manner. The guru should not try to show off or impress anyone. They're not out there to score social brownie points or climb the social ladder or anything like that. Okay. The guru should not come off as being self-righteous or holier than thou. There's a fine line there, and so again, someone who isn't arrogant, someone who's humble. Yeah. Ideally, you should want a guru that's part of the lineage of gurus, so that that this consciousness and energy and these teachings and techniques have been passed on generation to generation. There's a continued chain of enlightenment, a continued lineage of enlightenment there. Okay. Ideally, your guru would have would strike a good balance between compassion and strict. Yeah. So someone who is compassionate but also somewhat strict. Okay, you don't want to push over. That's for sure. And of course, ideally, you want a guru who has experienced all of these stages of samadhi, various times, multiple times, hopefully, and can speak intelligently about the various states of enlightenment and stages of enlightenment from their own experience. You want to work with someone who has already experienced what you want to experience, you see. So the guru is a little bit like a tour guide in that sense. You want to go somewhere, you want to visit this place, well, you hire a tour guide, don't you, that is familiar with the place and can show you around so you won't get lost. The guru is like this. Okay, so it's like a map or a tour guide. Okay, and I want to talk very briefly about my own experience with Mr. Davis, and then we'll open it up for questions. Okay, so about 14 years ago, something like that, I read Autobiography of a Yogi I was in a bookstore where I used to live in the North Georgia mountains, a metaphysical bookstore. And I was just walking around perusing books, and Autobiography of a Yogi was on the shelf with the cover facing out, and Yogananda's face, his eyes just immediately caught my attention. And so I bought the book, read it in a few days, knew that this was my path, knew I had found my path. And I had studied Eastern religions in college. I was a long-time yoga practitioner, meditator, and whatnot. But I didn't have a guru, and I was a little bit lost in the woods, to tell you the truth, at the time. Anyway, I read Autobiography of a Yogi. I prayed to God, please, Lord, bring me a guru like Yogananda who can teach me Kriya Yoga and meditation. So I prayed right after I read the book, earnestly. A week later, I was waiting for a massage in my friend's massage studio there in town, and I picked up a magazine that was like a local metaphysical magazine out of Atlanta. So I picked it up, opened up. The first page I opened to, there was a advertisement that said, meditation retreat in the North Georgia mountains with direct disciple of Paramahansa Yogananda. And it turns out Mr. Davis's ashram was only about 45 minutes from where I was living. I had no idea that it even existed at the time. And so there you go. I read the book. I prayed to God to send me a guru, and he did a week later. And then a month later, I went to my first retreat there and met Mr. Davis for the first time, meditated in his presence for the first time, and knew immediately that he was my teacher. Had a fairly mystical experience, to tell you the truth, the first time in his presence, and I remembered him. It's hard to describe, but I remembered him. His presence, his energy. Remembered the place. Everything was very familiar. The smells, the energy, everything. It's impossible to describe, but I knew he was my guru. Okay. And when I was in his presence, especially in the first couple of years, I began to notice that the more time I spent in his presence and at the ashram, the more I began to change, physiological changes, energetic changes. And of course, I was meditating regularly, but I noticed that these changes would accelerate, that my evolution would accelerate each time I was in the presence of Mr. Davis. And this is because he was certainly an awakener. He had this capacity. And so just think about that for a minute. Being in the physical presence of someone who is awake has the ability to change your brain and nervous system. And your chakras and your nadis. Being in the physical presence of an awakened master has the potential to literally change the structure of your brain and nervous system and chakras and nadis to facilitate higher states of consciousness and being. So this was my experience with Mr. Davis. that his presence was having an effect, because you see, his Shakti was fully awakened. And so if you're receptive and ready, when you're in the presence of someone whose Shakti is awakened, your Shakti awakens. It's almost like it's probably not not a great word to use right now, but it's almost contagious. This Shakti pot transmission, it kind of jumps from host to host. When you're receptive and prepared, and you're in the presence of someone whose Shakti is fully awakened, you light up like a match. So if you're doing the work and you're preparing the soil, you've planted that seed. The only thing that's missing for that catalyst is light, right? And the guru is that light that creates that transformation, that evolution, and catalyzes these important changes via the activation of the Sushumna Nadi and the Kundalini, the Shakti. There are beings that have this capacity. Mr. Davis was like that. So just being in his presence was transformative. Well, really, I could talk all day about stories with Mr. Davis, but this was my, and not only me, by the way, many of his students, of course, had the same experience with him. Being in his physical presence was transformative. Okay? Not just his teachings and not just the techniques that he taught us to practice, but there was an energetic transmission. Call it Shakti pod or whatever you want to call it. But this exists. This is all real. And so it looks like we've got some questions here. Let's see. Okay, here's a question. Can you follow a guru who is no longer alive physically? Sure. This is not the traditional yoga approach. But sure, why not? Mr. Davis wasn't a big fan of that. He thought it was much better to have a guru who's alive. I think probably it is. I tend to agree with that. But if someone, for example, wants to consider Paramahansa Yogananda their guru, I have no problem with that whatsoever, personally. Okay. How do you know if your teacher is not your guru? Okay. Or as you enter the Kriya Yoga practice, do you first meet teachers and then your guru? Or can you immediately meet your guru? Okay. Again, do you want to work with a teacher or do you want to work with a guru? It's slightly different. You might work with a Kriya Yoga teacher who does not expect your loyalty, your devotion, your selfless service, the submission to their authority, the surrendering of your ego and all that. That you can work with a teacher. But if you want to work with a guru, it's a little different. Are you ready to be loyal? Are you ready to be devoted? Are you ready to surrender your ego and submit a little bit to their leadership and authority and all of that? Are you ready to render selfless service if it's necessary? That's more of the yoga tradition guru-disciple relationship. And I'm not saying one is better than the other, by the way. Let's be clear. In my personal case, I have a very rebellious personality. So for me, it was a very important step in my process to have that kind of relationship with an authority figure, spiritual authority figure like that. It was a vital part of my process. It might not be necessary for everyone. I don't know. Okay. So again, do you want to have a spiritual teacher, a Kriya teacher, or do you want to work with like a guru? That's what you need to decide. Okay, because it's a little bit different. The relationship's a little bit different. Okay. And again, I'm not saying one relationship's better than the other. It depends on your personality and your needs, your spiritual needs. Are there any female gurus? Yes, of course, there are many. Yes, your gender or sex or your identity or sexuality, none of that has any bearing on your on one's capacity to wake up spiritually or to teach. Yeah, there are many female gurus. Matter of fact, in our Kriya Yoga tradition, Ananda Mayi Ma, she's not considered one of the gurus of our lineage, but she was revered by Yogananda and others, rightly so. I had the fortune to spend some time with Sri Karuna Mai, who's a modern Indian guru woman, and really enjoyed spending time with her and learning from her. And she's really wonderful, has really wonderful energy. Of course, we have Amma, the hugging saint. Probably the most famous guru in the world right now is a woman, Amma. Okay. Can the guru fully awaken the disciple as Sri Yukteswar did for Paramahansa Yogananda? I think you're referring to the time when Sri Yukteswar gave Paramahansa Yogananda samadhi, gave him an experience of samadhi. Yes, there are gurus who have that ability. Yogananda also had that ability. There are gurus who have that ability. Not all gurus have that ability. There are a rare few. Okay. But don't rely or depend on the guru. Yeah, to have super conscious experiences and samadhi experiences. Do your own work. Yeah. What are the qualities which a person should possess, cultivate even before asking spiritual teacher for guidance? Wow, that's a great question. Receptivity. Be receptive. Be open. Be humble. Be willing to take direction from someone. Be ready to be loyal. Be ready to be devoted. And try to clean your stuff up a little bit, before you get involved with a serious spiritual teacher, a guru. Prepare yourself. Clean up some of your stuff, some of your habits and non-useful activities, things of that nature. And how to deal with human fault of a spiritual teacher. Okay, especially when the teacher had helped me a lot in the last 20 years, but recently I found my private session with my teacher become very difficult, some abusive words. Am I growing out of this guru? He's the person who recommended me out of biography of yoga. Change my relation. Well, yeah, you don't want to be with anyone that's abusive. There's a fine line between being abusive and just being really strict. Mr. Davis was very strict. He was never abusive, but he was very strict. He wouldn't mince words, He didn't sugarcoat anything. But yeah, you don't want to be with anyone that's abusive. I'm sorry that happened. That might not be the most ideal relationship for you to be in. So you ask your teacher to become your guru. Yes. You have to ask them. That's right. Thank you for mentioning that. Yeah, the teacher chooses the guru. Yeah, the guru doesn't, the student chooses the guru. The guru doesn't choose the student. And yes, you have to ask. Typically, yeah, you would have to ask, can you be my guru? Will you be my guru? I asked Mr. Davis that, and I'd only known him for like a month or something. And I asked him in person in our first private meeting, and I didn't even know if he used the word guru at the time to describe himself, and he really didn't, at least not publicly. But I asked him, yeah, will you be my guru? Anyway, so yeah, you should ask. Interesting time. It was like, do you plan on doing any more episodes? Oh, my podcast. Yeah, I might. I started a podcast like a year ago, maybe, called the Western Yoga Podcast. It's on Podbean. I think I did 7 or 8 episodes. Yeah, I might start that back up. Thank you I'm glad somebody's listening to that. Yeah, I might do some more episodes. I wonder if the idea of surrendering your ego to a guru is antithesis or opposite of what it means to find inner realization, which is a process only you can find through practice and direct experience, so your teacher can only guide you to find the guru within you. Yeah, that's mostly true. I would agree with that. However, in my particular case, it was helpful for me to surrender my ego to someone somewhat. That was helpful for me. Now, is working with a guru the only way to learn ego loss and the surrendering of the ego? No. There are other ways, but for me personally, it was very useful. But yeah, that's true. One of the issues I find sometimes with people that say, well, the inner guru is the real guru. You don't need an outer guru. There's only the inner guru. In an ultimate sense, that is true. But in a more practical, useful, mundane sense, I find that people that are willing to work with an external guru, the outer guru, that outer guru can definitely help you find your inner guru, you know. And so the outer guru, the external guru, is useful in the pursuit of discovering the innate intelligence that is guiding your evolution and transformation. Once self-realized, what more is required from a guru? Wouldn't the best teacher be higher self? I'm not sure I understand. Once self-realized, what more is required from a guru? Wouldn't the best teacher be higher self? Yes, I see what you're saying. No, yeah, of course. Once you're fully self-realized, you no longer really need a guru, do you? At that point, you may even become a guru yourself and have your own students and all of that. So yes, that is true. I guess there comes a point in time you reach a certain level of enlightenment or realization where the guru is no longer really a necessary part of your path. You may stay devoted to that guru and that lineage. Yes, that is certainly true. All right, great. It looks like that might be the last question. So, I'm not sure if there's any other questions. Let's see. I have a connection to a spiritual teacher. Sorry, hang on one second. to spiritual teacher who lives in India. He has many followers in India, but not many Western students. One of my issues is that he speaks very little English. When he travels to Australia, I go to him. His presence is very powerful for me. Okay, yeah, that's good. I also worked with an Indian guru of the Jain tradition for a couple of years named Puja Sri Gurudev, who also doesn't speak a whole lot of English, and I attended some of his satsangs and retreats. And but it was okay because you just kind of have that heart connection with the teacher sometimes, and the words aren't so important. You sit in that presence, and you absorb and assimilate the presence. Oftentimes the presence and the energy there is more transformative than whatever words might be coming out of a teacher's mouth, right? So yeah, language shouldn't be a barrier. Shouldn't be a barrier. If you feel a heart connection with that teacher, then there you go. Okay. All right. So I guess we'll go ahead and end there. If there are no other questions. So thank you so much, everyone, that's in the Zoom session right now. I appreciate it. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your retreat with all these great Kriya teachers. And I believe Sunday at 2:00 we'll have a chance to do a closing all together.